You've seen it before. A crowded room filled with noise, stories, laughter, opinions colliding like sparks. But then, someone speaks, just a few words, and suddenly, the air changes. People lean in, heads turn, even the silence listens. Meanwhile, another person talks endlessly, filling every pause with clever jokes, impressive facts, or forced charm. Yet their words evaporate the moment they stop speaking. Same room, same noise. But one voice carries weight, while the other disappears into it. Why do some voices command silence while others fade into noise? Why do some people speak once and leave a mark, while others repeat themselves 1,000 times and are forgotten before the sentence ends? It's not vocabulary, not volume, not charisma. It's something deeper, something the Stoics understood centuries ago. The difference is weight. Weight doesn't come from speaking more, it comes from presence, from the way you use silence, from the honesty behind your words, from the calm that says, I don't need to prove anything, I'm already grounded. Most people think attraction is about addition. Be smarter, be funnier, be louder, be more interesting. They try to decorate their sentences like ornaments on a fragile tree, hoping someone will notice. But the Stoics knew a harder truth. Attraction isn't addition, it's subtraction. You don't gain presence by performing, you gain it by removing what weakens you. Remove the need to impress. Remove the fear of silence. Remove the compulsion to fill every space with sound. When the noise stops, the truth of your character speaks for you. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In the same way, stop performing what confidence should look like. Be it. Your words won't matter until they come from a place that doesn't need approval. This isn't about tricks or tactics. It's not a guide on how to sound more intelligent or win conversations. It's about something far rarer, the quiet authority that comes from living with integrity. When you embody that, people don't just hear you, they feel you. In this journey, you'll learn 6 Stoic principles that transform not just how you speak, but who you are when you speak. They're not social hacks, they're reflections of character. Each one draws power from a single source, the discipline to stop performing and start being. So if you've ever wondered why your words don't land, why you talk more but connect less, stay here. Because once you understand how to speak the Stoic way, people won't just listen to your words, they'll listen to you. Stay present till the end. And if you're ready to master the art of quiet strength, welcome to the true Stoic way. You've seen it happen countless times. Someone begins to share something, maybe about their new project, a recent challenge, or a small victory that actually means a lot to them. And before they can even finish the sentence, another person interrupts. "Oh, that reminds me of when or worse, you should try this instead." The focus shifts instantly. What was once their moment to be heard becomes yet another stage for someone else's story. You can feel the energy leave the room when that happens. Their eyes dim a little, their shoulders pull back. They realize the other person wasn't listening. They were just waiting for their turn to speak. And even though the conversation continues, something invisible has been broken. Trust. Now, imagine the same moment unfolding differently. Someone says, "I've been learning guitar lately." And instead of replying with your own story or unsolicited advice, you simply say, "Tell me more about that." Then, you stop talking. You don't plan your next line. You don't fill the silence with commentary. You just listen. At first, it might feel strange. We live in a world where silence feels like failure, where conversations are competitions for airtime. But when you hold that space, when your presence says, "I actually care what comes next," something powerful happens. The person across from you opens up. Their words deepen. Their voice steadies. Because finally, someone isn't trying to fix them, impress them, or outshine them. Someone is simply with them. This is not a trick. It's not manipulation. It's presence, and it's magnetic. People spend most of their lives desperate to be heard, but rarely are. They're surrounded by advice givers, interrupters, performers, everyone eager to respond, few willing to understand. When you say, Tell me more about that and you mean it. You become something rare, a witness, not a competitor. Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." He wasn't just talking about conversation. He was teaching the architecture of respect. Real listening is an act of discipline. It's not passive. It's not about nodding politely while your mind races ahead. It's about turning down the noise of your own ego long enough to let someone else's truth come through. And here's the paradox. The less you try to sound interesting, the more interesting you become. Because people don't remember what you said. They remember how they felt when they said it to you. They don't walk away thinking, "Wow, that person was brilliant." They walk away thinking, "Wow, I felt understood." And that feeling is addictive. It's what draws them back to you again and again. The Stoics understood that listening isn't weakness. It's strength under control. Anyone can talk, but it takes composure to hold space for another person's words without the urge to dominate or direct them. It's a test of the ego and a quiet display of mastery. Try this in your daily life. At work, when a colleague shares an idea, resist the urge to correct or improve it immediately. Say, "Tell me more about that." Let them unfold their thought before you fold yours in. You'll notice something shift, not just in them, but in the entire tone of the room. They'll start seeing you as the calm center, the person who actually listens before deciding. In friendship, use it when someone talks about what excites them. Most people respond to excitement with competition. They want to share something equally impressive. Instead, respond with curiosity. Tell me more about that. Watch how their eyes light up. You've just given them a rare gift, undivided attention. And in love, this principle becomes sacred. When your partner speaks, don't rush to analyze or solve. Hold their words like something fragile, meant to be understood, not repaired. Because often, love isn't found in grand gestures or perfect answers. It's found in the quiet courage to listen without judgment. The Stoic communicator doesn't need to dominate a room. They guide it, not with words, but with presence. Their silence isn't empty. It's full of attention. And that attention is what gives every word they eventually speak its weight. So the next time someone starts talking, don't think about what you'll say next. Don't plan the clever response or the story that will make you look smart. Just breathe, look them in the eye, and when the moment comes, say, sincerely, "Tell me more about that." Because when you master this kind of attention, you become someone people trust. Not because you speak loudly, but because you listen deeply. And that is the first step toward living the true Stoic way. There's a strange fear that runs through nearly every conversation. The fear of saying, "I don't know." You've felt it. Someone asks a question you're unsure about, and a quiet panic stirs inside. You feel the pressure to appear informed, to say something clever, to fill the air with confidence even when you're standing on nothing. So you improvise, you hedge, you dress your uncertainty in words that sound intelligent but mean very little, and in that moment, you may win the appearance of knowing, but you lose the truth. It's one of the most common habits in human interaction, faking knowledge to protect the ego. We fear that admitting ignorance makes us look small, foolish, unworthy of respect. But the opposite is true. Pretending to know reveals a deeper weakness, the inability to be real. Watch two people in the same situation. Both are asked about something outside their expertise, a subject they don't fully understand. The first person tightens up. Their mind races for something to say. They deliver an answer filled with vague buzzwords and confident tone, hoping nobody notices the emptiness behind it. Everyone nods politely, but the words fall flat. The listener feels something's off. The rhythm of truth isn't there. The second person pauses. They think for a moment and say calmly, "I don't know." No panic, no apology, no nervous laughter to soften the blow, just honesty delivered without fear. And instantly the room shifts. Because when someone is honest about what they don't know, you start believing what they do know. Their words carry weight precisely because they've shown they don't need to be right all the time. Their confidence is quiet, built not on image, but integrity. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Socrates, perhaps the wisest man of his time, once said, "I know that I know nothing." He wasn't mocking himself or playing humble. He was describing the foundation of wisdom, the recognition that knowledge begins where pretense ends. The insecure mind believes, if I don't know everything, I am nothing. The disciplined mind knows, if I pretend to know everything, I learn nothing. True Stoic humility is not self-deprecation, it's accuracy. It's the courage to see yourself clearly, to acknowledge both your strength and your limits without shame. The Stoic doesn't chase the illusion of certainty. They prefer the solid ground of truth, even if that truth is, I don't know yet. Modern psychology supports this ancient wisdom. People can sense when you're pretending. Our brains are wired to detect inconsistency between words and energy, tone and truth. When you fake knowledge, you may convince someone for a moment, but you also plant a quiet seed of doubt. If they're willing to fake this, what else are they faking? Honesty, on the other hand, builds credibility through contrast. When you say, I don't know sincerely, you prove that you care more about truth than perception. You demonstrate self-trust, the belief that your worth isn't dependent on appearing flawless. And ironically, that humility makes people trust you more. The next time you're tempted to fake it, pause and ask yourself, would I rather look certain for a minute or be trusted for a lifetime? Because when truth becomes your habit, people stop doubting your words. They know that when you do speak with certainty, it means something. It's not performance. It's conviction born from honesty. But there's a subtle trap here. False humility. You've seen it before. Someone says, oh, I don't know much about that, then proceeds to talk for 10 minutes proving they do. That's not humility. That's ego wearing a mask. Real humility doesn't need to downplay knowledge or inflate ignorance. It just states reality, clean and unadorned. Sometimes, I don't know is followed by curiosity. I don't know, but I'd like to learn. That simple addition transforms ignorance into strength. It says, I'm not pretending, I'm exploring. That's the mindset of a Stoic, not to appear wise, but to become wiser. And notice how this changes relationships. When you're honest about what you don't know, people relax around you. They stop competing. They stop guarding their egos. Your honesty gives them permission to be honest too. Conversations become real again, not performances of who's smarter, but collaborations toward truth. You see this in leaders who admit mistakes, in mentors who say, I don't have all the answers, but let's figure it out together. These are the people others follow, not because they project perfection, but because they project humanity. The Stoic doesn't chase the illusion of knowing everything. They cultivate the peace of knowing themselves, and that peace, that inner stillness, gives their words more power than all the noise of pretended certainty. So, the next time someone asks a question you can't answer, breathe. Let the urge to perform pass through you. Then say simply, I don't know. Say it with calmness, not shame. Say it like someone who values truth over ego. Because every time you choose honesty over performance, you sharpen the blade of your character. And remember, if honesty feels like weakness, it's actually your strongest armor. The world doesn't need more people who sound sure. It needs more people who are sure enough to admit when they're not. A friend sits across from you, their eyes weary, their voice soft and heavy, carrying the kind of fatigue that doesn't come from a single bad day, but from weeks, maybe months, of quiet exhaustion. They begin to speak, slowly, cautiously, about how everything feels like too much lately. The workload that never ends, the relationship that feels more like a test than a refuge, the endless effort of trying to keep it all together while appearing composed. You can feel the vulnerability in their words, that delicate moment when someone lets down the mask they wear for the world. But almost instinctively, before they can even finish, you interrupt. Maybe you just need to take a break. Have you tried being more organized? At least you still have a job. It could be worse. You mean well, of course. You think you're helping. But the moment those words leave your mouth, something subtle happens. Their shoulders tense, their gaze drifts downward, and a small invisible wall rises between you. What they heard wasn't understanding. It was dismissal. a quiet suggestion that their pain isn't worth the space it occupies. Without realizing it, you've taken their moment of truth and replaced it with your need to fix, to advise, to speak. And in doing so, you've told them that what they feel is a problem to be solved, not an experience to be understood. This is one of the most common and most damaging habits in human conversation. We rush to solve because someone else's discomfort reminds us of our own. Their pain mirrors something we once buried, something unresolved, and we can't stand to sit in that reflection. So we talk, we advise, we throw words at the wound like bandages, hoping that if we cover it fast enough, it'll stop bleeding. But pain doesn't dissolve in advice, it softens in understanding. Now imagine a different moment. The same friend speaks, their voice trembling at the edge of honesty, and this time, you resist the urge to fill the space. You let their words exist, raw, imperfect, unfinished. And when they pause, you simply say, "That sounds difficult." 3 words, no solutions, no stories, just acknowledgement, and then you stay quiet. In that silence, something powerful unfolds. They exhale, maybe for the first time all day. The tension in their shoulders releases. Their eyes lift again, not to look for your wisdom, but because they feel seen. You didn't minimize their pain or compare it to your own. You gave it permission to exist, and that in itself is an act of healing. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be tolerant with others, strict with yourself." Yet most of us live the opposite way. We're harsh with others' struggles and forgiving of our own. Impatient with someone else's pain, but endlessly gentle with our own excuses. The Stoic way reverses that imbalance. It asks us to hold ourselves accountable while meeting others with understanding, to embody patience not as passivity, but as strength, to remain steady enough that another person's storm doesn't throw us off course. Patience is not weakness, it is controlled power. It is the art of holding space for chaos without letting it infect your calm. It means standing firm while someone else's emotions surge and knowing that your role is not to extinguish their fire, but to make sure it doesn't burn alone. Stoic patience is emotional containment, not cold detachment, but disciplined compassion. It's the rare capacity to say, "You don't have to be okay right now, and I can stay with you anyway." When someone shares their pain, they're not asking you to carry it. They're asking for proof that they're not alone inside it. To listen, truly listen, without jumping to respond is one of the most generous things a person can do. Listening is not the absence of words, it's the presence of stillness. It's the act of lending your mind without demanding the stage. And it changes everything. Because when people feel heard, their nervous system relaxes, their defenses drop. The noise inside them begins to settle. They start to see paths they couldn't before. Not because you gave them answers, but because you gave them room. The Stoics understood that real strength is not shown in how many problems you can solve, but in how calmly you can remain when nothing can be solved immediately. So the next time someone opens up, resist the reflex to speak. Don't reach for the nearest piece of advice or the comforting cliche that only distances you from what's real. Breathe. Stay with them. Let the silence between you hold more meaning than the words you could ever offer. When the time feels right, say gently, "That sounds difficult." Those 3 words don't close the conversation. They open it wider. They invite honesty, vulnerability, depth. They say, "I hear you," without claiming to understand everything. They create space for authenticity, which is something most people spend their entire lives searching for. And when you practice this long enough, something beautiful begins to happen. People start to trust you, not because you're brilliant or wise, but because you're safe. They bring their real selves to you, the unfiltered parts they hide from the rest of the world, because they know you won't rush to fix them. They know you'll listen. Marcus Aurelius's wisdom still echoes today. Tolerance for others, discipline for oneself, to listen without judgment, to respond with compassion, to be steady when others tremble. This is the quiet power of Stoicism. Remember, your words are not always the medicine. Often it's your stillness that heals. So be the person who offers presence, not prescriptions. Because that, more than any advice, any clever phrase, any solution, is how Stoics create real connection, by becoming the calm that others can rest within. The room is alive with noise, a dozen voices overlapping, laughter spilling from every corner, stories crashing into one another like waves against the same wall. Everyone wants to be heard, each voice rising just a little louder to compete for attention. It's the kind of sound that feels full but means nothing, a symphony of distraction. And then someone doesn't speak. They simply wait. They don't fidget. Don't rush to fill the air. Don't search for validation in the next sentence. They're still, attentive, almost serene. For a moment, nothing happens. But then, subtly, the atmosphere shifts. Conversations slow. Heads turn. The noise softens, not because they demanded it, but because their silence demanded notice. When they finally do speak, it's brief, measured, deliberate. And suddenly, everyone listens. That's the paradox of presence. The quieter you are, the more people feel you. The fewer words you use, the more weight they carry. Most people think communication is about talking well, about the elegance of phrasing, the rhythm of speech, the performance of intelligence. But those who truly hold influence know something deeper. Real power in conversation doesn't come from the sound of your voice, but from the restraint behind it. Silence is not the absence of communication. It's its purest form. It's the quiet space where intention sharpens and meaning gathers before it's released. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They knew that silence, when rooted in self-control, becomes an invisible force, a gravity that pulls others toward you without effort. Seneca once wrote, "Silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life." He understood that people who talk constantly are often not expressing mastery, but escaping something. They speak to fill the air because they're terrified of what will surface if the noise stops. Their own thoughts, their doubts, their unhealed fears. Silence confronts them with themselves, and that's unbearable. So they talk, about anything, about everything, not to connect but to distract. Their words are not bridges, but barriers, built to protect them from the emptiness they refuse to face. The Stoic, however, does something radically different. He doesn't run from silence, he enters it. He allows the quiet to refine him, to burn away impulsive words and half-formed thoughts until only what's essential remains. When he finally speaks, his voice carries the echo of that discipline. To the untrained ear, silence feels awkward, an unfinished sentence, an invitation to fill the gap. But to the Stoic, it's sacred space. It's the pause between the notes that gives the music meaning. The mind that can rest in silence is a mind that has found peace with itself. There's a profound psychological reason for this. In moments of quiet, our nervous system resets. Our attention deepens. Silence activates reflection, awareness, and emotional regulation. When you can remain still while others scramble for noise, you project calm authority, the kind that can't be faked. People instinctively trust those who can pause before they speak, because that pause signals thoughtfulness, balance, and control. The one who fills every gap with chatter is seeking reassurance. The one who can wait, who lets words ripen before releasing them, radiates confidence. They don't speak to prove anything. They speak because they have something to say. Picture two kinds of communicators. The first talks endlessly. Every pause makes them anxious. Every silence feels like failure. Their words blur together until nothing stands out, like a song with no rhythm. The second waits. When they finally speak, it's as if the entire room inhales with them. Their silence frames their speech. The pause before their words becomes part of their message. It tells you what follows will matter. This is what gives silence its paradoxical strength. It makes everything around it louder. In stillness, meaning amplifies. In restraint, power concentrates. But silence isn't only for others, it's for yourself. When you stop filling every moment with noise, you begin to hear what your own mind has been trying to say all along. You uncover thoughts you've buried under constant motion, emotions you've ignored beneath constant distraction. Silence becomes the mirror in which you finally see yourself clearly. And once you learn to be at peace there, truly comfortable in the quiet, you no longer chase validation from conversation. You no longer need to dominate a room to prove your worth. You carry your calm wherever you go, and that calm speaks for you long before your words ever do. The Stoics saw silence as the training ground for wisdom. You can't learn while you're speaking. You can't observe when you're trying to impress. Silence teaches humility, the awareness that truth doesn't need decoration. It teaches patience, the discipline to let thoughts mature before you share them, and it teaches presence, the rare ability to be here without rushing to the next moment. In modern life, this kind of silence is almost revolutionary. We're surrounded by endless talking, podcasts, reels, debates, notifications, everyone shouting into the void, terrified of not being heard. But the wise understand. When everyone's shouting, silence becomes the rarest, most powerful sound of all. So practice it. When you're in a meeting, don't rush to respond first. Let others fill the air. Watch the dynamic unfold. Then speak once, clearly, without noise. When you're with friends, don't force stories to stay relevant. Let pauses breathe between your words. When you're alone, turn off the music, put down the phone and listen, not to the world, but to the quiet rhythm within yourself. That's where composure is born. That's where clarity lives. Silence is not emptiness, it's presence. It's the space where attention gathers before it becomes action, where self-control transforms into influence. And when you master it, you'll find that people start listening to you differently. Not because you're louder, but because your words emerge from stillness, and stillness has gravity. So, if this resonates with you, remember this simple discipline. Before you speak, pause. Let silence sharpen your message before sound carries it. And if you're ready to master the art of that pause, to cultivate the strength that speaks even in stillness, stay present and subscribe to the true Stoic way. There's a kind of gratitude that everyone understands. The polite, transactional kind. Someone helps you move furniture, covers your shift, brings you coffee, and you say, "Thank you." It's courteous. It's correct. But it's also shallow. Not because it's wrong, but because it only touches the surface of what gratitude could be. You're acknowledging the action, not the person. You're saying, "I appreciate what you did," not, "I appreciate who you are." That difference may seem small, but it changes everything. One kind of appreciation ends with the act, the other strengthens the bond. One repays a gesture, the other recognizes character. In a world that constantly measures people by their usefulness, their productivity, their output, their results, being seen for who you are instead of what you do is a rare and powerful experience. Most of us spend our days performing competence at work, performing stability in relationships, performing patience in public. We're praised for efficiency, not essence, for achievement, not integrity. And somewhere along the way, the human part of being human begins to fade into the background. That's why a simple phrase like "I appreciate you" hits differently. Those three words don't praise performance, they acknowledge presence. They say, "I see the kind of person you are, not just the things you do." They reach deeper than any compliment could, because they touch something primal, the universal longing to be recognized, not for what we produce, but for what we embody. Imagine this. A friend shows up for you during a difficult time, not once but repeatedly, listening when you need to vent, checking in when everyone else forgets, holding space for your silence when words fail. Most people would say, "Thanks for being there." And that's fine. It acknowledges the action. But when you say, "I appreciate you," you're recognizing something more enduring. You're saying, "You are the kind of person who shows up, who cares, who stays when others walk away." You're not just grateful for what they did. You're grateful that they exist the way they do. That kind of acknowledgement has gravity. It tells people they're not invisible. It says, "I see your consistency, your integrity, your quiet strength, and I don't take it for granted." Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. In his meditations, he reminded himself every morning to consider the people around him, not for their utility, but for their humanity. He wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love, To the Stoic emperor, gratitude wasn't reserved for grand gestures or noble deeds. It was a daily practice of seeing the value in existence itself, in life, in others, in the small moments of shared presence. When you start seeing people this way, beyond function, beyond transaction, relationships change. Colleagues become collaborators, not competitors. Friendships deepen. Love matures into something steadier, quieter, truer. Because appreciation, when it's genuine, creates safety. It tells others, you don't have to keep proving yourself here. You're already enough. Psychologically, this kind of recognition fulfills one of our deepest human needs, the need to belong. To feel that who we are, not just what we contribute, has meaning to someone else. And the irony is, when people feel seen in this way, they naturally give more. Not because they're obligated, but because they're connected. Appreciation inspires loyalty, not through obligation, but through resonance. This doesn't mean you scatter compliments recklessly or turn appreciation into a performance. Like all things that carry real weight, it loses power when overused or insincere. Saying, "I appreciate you" for something trivial, like passing the salt, cheapens the phrase. But saying it when someone's character shows itself, when their actions reflect the deeper truth of who they are, that's when it lands. That's when it leaves a mark. Think of how rare this is. The world thanks you for your productivity, for showing up, for meeting expectations. But when someone looks at you and says, "I appreciate you," without needing a reason, it disarms you. You pause, because it touches something deeper than politeness. It touches recognition. It reminds you that you matter beyond your function, beyond your performance, beyond what you can offer. To live and speak this way, with conscious gratitude, not convenience, is a Stoic act, because it demands awareness, restraint, and sincerity. It's easier to throw around generic thanks than it is to look at someone and truly see them. But the Stoic doesn't chase the easy path. They choose the meaningful one. They train their perception not just to observe actions, but to perceive essence. And here's what happens when you do this consistently. People trust you. They open up. They become loyal in a way no transactional relationship can replicate. You become the person who doesn't just acknowledge, but recognizes. In a culture obsessed with doing, you become a rare witness to being. So the next time someone helps you, stands by you, or simply shows up as themselves, pause. Don't just thank them for the action. Look at them and say with sincerity, "I appreciate you." Let those words carry the full awareness of what they mean. Because what you're truly saying is, you matter, not because of what you give me, but because of who you are. When you speak this way, you remind others and yourself that connection is not built on transaction, but on truth. You embody the Stoic understanding that gratitude is not a reaction. It's a recognition. And when you see people, not their functions, you walk the true Stoic way. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that no amount of rest can fix, the fatigue of a person who says yes too often. You see it in their eyes, the quiet resentment of someone stretched thin across other people's priorities, their own dreams quietly suffocating under layers of obligation. Their calendar is full, but their soul is empty. They've become available for everything, and in the process, they've become invisible to themselves. Every time they say yes when they mean no, a small piece of their integrity erodes. It doesn't happen loudly. It's quiet, almost invisible at first. They agree to help with something they don't care about, attend a dinner they don't enjoy, take on a project they don't believe in. And each time they silence their own truth for the comfort of others, their voice weakens, their clarity fades, and the world learns that their boundaries are negotiable. Most people mistake kindness for compliance. They believe that being agreeable keeps the peace, that saying yes to everything will make them liked, respected, included. But what actually happens is the opposite. When your yes is automatic, it stops meaning anything. People stop valuing your time because you've shown them that you don't value it. Epictetus warned, "First learn the meaning of what you say and then speak." Those words cut deeper than they appear. Every yes carries meaning. It's not just a sound, it's a promise. It's your time, your energy, your focus, your finite life being offered to something outside yourself. If you say yes without understanding the cost, you're not being generous, you're being careless. A yes without discernment is like spending money you don't have. You feel generous in the moment, but what follows is regret. The quiet resentment of knowing you've traded your peace for approval. The Stoic understands that saying no isn't rejection, it's recognition. It's the acknowledgement that your time is sacred and that every commitment you make shapes who you become. To live without boundaries is to live without identity. Because boundaries don't push people away when they filter them. They reveal who truly respects you, who values your presence, and who only values your compliance. There's a strange irony here. People who can't say no often believe they're protecting relationships. In reality, they're weakening them. Constant agreement breeds quiet resentment, and resentment poisons connection. True respect only grows where honesty exists. When you say no with integrity, you may disappoint someone temporarily, but you earn their respect permanently. Consider the two types of people in any group. The first agrees to everything, extra work, last-minute plans, endless favors, and is constantly tired, secretly bitter, and quietly unseen. The second chooses carefully. They pause before responding. They weigh the request, and when they decline, they do it clearly and calmly. Their no may surprise people at first, but soon it earns something deeper than approval. It earns trust. Because when you know someone can say no, you start believing their yes. A life without boundaries feels productive but is actually scattered. You find yourself doing 100 things halfway instead of a few things wholeheartedly. You lose depth. You lose focus. You become a supporting character in everyone else's story. The Stoic refuses this fate. They understand that self-respect begins with selective commitment. Every time you protect your time, you strengthen your integrity, and your integrity is the foundation of freedom. There's a discipline to saying no. It's not anger, not rebellion, not selfishness. It's self-command. It requires presence, patience, and courage. It's easy to give away your time when you don't know its worth. But once you understand that your time is your life measured in hours, minutes, heartbeats, every yes becomes sacred. Try this. Before agreeing to anything, pause. Don't answer out of guilt or habit. Ask yourself, would I still say yes if this required my full energy, my full attention, my full self? If the answer is no, then your answer should be too. When you start living this way, everything changes. Your days grow quieter, your decisions sharper. People stop assuming your availability, and when you do say yes, it carries gravity, because it's real. Your presence becomes something others respect, not something they take for granted. It's important to remember that saying no doesn't make you cold or detached, it makes you precise. You're not withdrawing from life. You're choosing where to live it fully. A Stoic doesn't build walls, they build gates. The wrong things are turned away, not out of contempt but out of care for what truly matters inside. Think of how nature operates. Even the strongest tree doesn't let every wind pass through it. It bends when it must, but it stands firm when it should. Boundaries are not barriers. They are the framework that gives your life shape. Without them, you collapse under the weight of endless demands. When you start saying no honestly, you begin reclaiming parts of yourself you forgot existed. Your focus, your stillness, your depth. You rediscover the clarity that comes from choosing your direction instead of drifting with everyone else's. And those who truly belong in your life will understand, even appreciate your refusal. Because they, too, are seeking authenticity over approval. So say no when you must, calmly, without guilt, without apology. Protect your time, your energy, your attention. Let your no be as complete and unshakable as your yes is deliberate and sincere. Remember, your yes only matters when your no is real. The Stoics knew that a disciplined mind leads to a liberated life. When you say no with intention, you're not rejecting others, you're honoring yourself. And in doing so, you teach the world how to value your presence. Say no when you must, so your yes becomes sacred. That's how Stoics reclaim their lives, not by trying to please everyone, but by choosing consciously who and what is truly worth their time. When you look back at the 6 principles, you start to see a pattern emerge, not a list of techniques, but a ladder of character. Each step builds upon the one before it. shaping a kind of quiet strength that doesn't need to announce itself. The first, curiosity, teaches you to listen with genuine attention. The second, honesty, reminds you that truth carries more weight than performance. The third, validation, reveals that compassion connects deeper than correction. The fourth, silence, shows that restraint amplifies presence. The fifth, recognition, elevates gratitude into something human and sacred. And the sixth, boundaries, transforms discipline into freedom. Together, they form the structure of a Stoic communicator, someone who doesn't speak to impress, but to express what is real, who doesn't chase approval, but earns respect through authenticity. Each principle is simple on its own, yet when lived consistently, they create a kind of presence that feels magnetic, not because it demands attention, but because it embodies peace. The world teaches you to add more words, more charm, more noise, more effort to stand out. But the Stoic way turns that idea upside down. Attraction isn't addition, it's subtraction. It's about removing everything that clutters your voice, everything that dilutes your essence. You don't become more powerful by performing. You become powerful by being clear, by being whole, by being still. Curiosity strips away self-absorption. Honesty strips away pretense. Validation strips away judgment. Silence strips away noise. Recognition strips away indifference. Boundaries strip away weakness. And what remains, once you've removed all that is unnecessary, is you, present, calm, and untouchable. That's the paradox of Stoicism. When you stop trying to be impressive, you naturally become unforgettable. Picture this: a room full of people talking over one another, trying to be noticed, each voice competing to be the loudest. And in that room stands one person, quiet, attentive, composed. They're not seeking attention, but somehow, they have it. Not because they've said anything remarkable, but because they carry something others have lost: stillness. That's what these 6 principles build within you. A stillness that speaks louder than noise. The kind of composure that draws people in without effort. The kind of strength that doesn't depend on applause. It's the presence of someone who has learned that power isn't in performing but in being. When you live this way, your relationships shift. Conversations become deeper. Your words, fewer but heavier, start to carry real meaning. People trust you because they can feel that your calm is genuine, not rehearsed. You no longer chase validation. You attract respect. You no longer fill silence. You own it. You no longer seek control. You embody it. That is what it means to live the true Stoic way. To move through a loud world with quiet certainty. To let your presence speak for you long before your words do. So, if this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone drowning in noise. Someone trying too hard to be seen. Remind them that peace is louder than performance, and that the strongest voice in any room often says the least. And if you're ready to live with that kind of strength, to speak less, mean more, and live with presence, then subscribe to True Stoic Way, where together we strip away the noise, master the pause, and learn what it truly means to live with depth and intention. Because the moment you stop performing is the moment people finally start listening.